In the aftermath of Donald Trump's presidency, we're witnessing an alarming scenario unfold in towns across America where blind loyalty to his promises is having dire consequences. One such town, Dalton, Georgia, serves as a stark example of the dangers of supporting a politician without fully considering the long-term impact of their policies. Dalton, often touted as the carpet capital of the world, has built its economy on the backs of immigrants, many of whom are undocumented. For years, the town's vibrant workforce, primarily made up of Hispanic immigrants, has been crucial to sustaining its massive carpet industry. However, in 2016, Dalton voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump, a decision that has now come back to haunt the very community that helped propel him to the presidency. Dalton's economy, once reliant on the hard work of its immigrant population, is now teetering on the edge of collapse due to Trump's harsh promises of mass deportations. As Trump pushes forward with his agenda to expel undocumented workers from the country, the residents of Dalton are left to face the reality that their town's survival is now at risk. The situation in Dalton is a perfect example of how loyalty to a leader who made bold promises without understanding the full scope of those promises can backfire catastrophically. In this video, we will explore how Dalton's loyalty to Trump has led to a crisis of economic uncertainty and what this town's plight means for others who face the same fate. Dalton, a town built on immigrant labor. Dalton, Georgia, located in the North Georgia mountains, has long been known for its carpet mills. These mills, which produce more than 85% of the carpets and rugs in the United States, are the backbone of the local economy. However, these mills would not exist as they do today without the labor of immigrants, primarily from Mexico and Central America. In fact, many of the workers in Dalton's carpet industry are undocumented, filling jobs that local Americans have historically shunned due to the hard, labor-intensive nature of the work and low wages. The town, which is nestled in Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's congressional district, voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump in the 2016 election, with 72% of residents casting their ballots for the Republican candidate. At the time, Trump's anti-immigrant rhetoric resonated strongly with many voters who were drawn to his promises of cracking down on illegal immigration and building a wall along the southern border. His message, emphasizing that America First would mean ending the influx of undocumented workers, seemed to promise a better future for those who felt their way of life was under threat from immigration. However, there was little consideration given to the reality that the very industries, such as the carpet mills, that made Dalton thrive relied heavily on the labor of these immigrants. A workforce that had been essential to the economic success of the town was suddenly under threat from the very policies Trump promised to implement. The impact of mass deportations. Now, as Trump's promises of mass deportations move from rhetoric to reality, Dalton's residents are beginning to understand the true cost of their blind loyalty. The looming threat of mass deportations has caused widespread panic among Dalton's immigrant population, many of whom are undocumented but have lived in the town for years. For workers like Miguel Marquez, a 53-year-old who fled Mexico to escape violence and now supports his family in Dalton, the fear of deportation is constant. Marquez, who works day jobs cleaning homes, worries that he'll be caught in an immigration raid and deported, leaving his daughter behind in an unsafe country. This fear is not limited to workers alone. Employers in Dalton are also deeply concerned about the impact of losing their immigrant labor force. Grilla Carroll, a branch manager for a temporary staffing agency, acknowledges the reliance on immigrant workers, stating that if the Hispanic workforce were removed, the local economy would shut down completely. Carroll, who is a Hispanic American and voted for Trump, admits that many employers in Dalton hire workers with questionable legal status because of the labor shortages in the area. Without this labor, the town's industries would face a severe crisis. Even more concerning for many residents is the Trump administration's intention to go beyond simply deporting undocumented immigrants and actively seeking to denaturalize those who have already become naturalized citizens. Trump's senior advisor, Stephen Miller, has been vocal about his plans to supercharge the denaturalization process, targeting those who gained citizenship through legal means, especially if they are perceived to be undesirable. The Trump administration's policies not only threaten the economic foundation of towns like Dalton, but also set a dangerous precedent for criminalizing the mere act of supporting or assisting undocumented individuals. As former Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) Director Tom Homan has stated, businesses that employ undocumented workers or individuals who harbor them could face felony charges. This means that the consequences of supporting the immigrant workforce are now a legal and financial threat to both business owners and local residents. Dalton's economic predicament. Dalton's economy is deeply tied to its immigrant labor force, and the carpet industry is just one of several sectors that rely heavily on immigrant workers. The town's chicken processing plants, construction, landscaping, and agriculture sectors all depend on the hard work of immigrants, many of whom are undocumented. The talk of mass deportations has spurred activity among business owners, community leaders, and local government officials who are desperately trying to find ways to ensure that their workforce can remain intact. The Greater Dalton Chamber of Commerce, led by President Jason Mock, is working with federal officials to explore ways to mitigate the potential fallout from these policies. Despite these efforts, it's clear that Dalton's residents and employers are at a crossroads. For years, the town has benefited from the contributions of its immigrant population, but now, as Trump's immigration policies threaten to dismantle that labor force, the town is facing a possible economic collapse. This situation is a direct consequence of the blind loyalty that many residents showed towards Trump and his promises without fully understanding the repercussions for their local economy. The broader impact on other towns. Dalton is not alone in facing this dilemma. Across the country, towns that have relied on immigrant labor for decades are now grappling with the reality of mass deportations. Springfield, Ohio, is another example of a town where immigrants were initially welcomed to fill factory jobs, only to have their status called into question under Trump's administration. In these towns, residents are now waking up to the fact that their economic stability was built on the very people they now fear will be deported. A Reddit user's comment about Dalton captures the frustration many people in these towns are feeling. They pointed out that residents who voted for Trump now find themselves in a difficult position. They voted for mass deportations, but now, with the threat of losing the immigrant workforce, they're hoping that Trump will make exceptions for those who don't cause any trouble. Unfortunately, this is not how the Trump administration operates. There are no exceptions for immigrants who contribute positively to their communities. Trump's goal is to expel all undocumented workers, regardless of their contributions to the economy or their standing in the community. As one TikToker pointed out, the situation in towns like Dalton is a stark reminder of the consequences of ignoring the complexities of immigration. In rural areas, immigrants are often the backbone of industries like farming, construction, and factory work, where wages are low and labor is grueling. If these workers are deported, the result will be skyrocketing costs as businesses are forced to pay higher wages to American workers who may be unwilling to take these jobs. This could lead to higher prices for goods and services and, ultimately, the collapse of industries that depend on immigrant labor. The situation in Dalton, Georgia, serves as a cautionary tale for the rest of America. Blind loyalty to a leader who promises bold changes without considering the broader consequences can lead to devastating outcomes. Dalton, once a thriving town built on the hard work of its immigrant population, now finds itself in jeopardy as Donald Trump's promises of mass deportations threaten to unravel its economy. The town's reliance on immigrant labor has left it vulnerable to the very policies that Trump campaigned on, and now, as residents realize the severity of the situation, they are left to grapple with the consequences of their choices. Dalton is not an isolated case. Across the country, Other towns and cities that supported Trump in the 2016 election are now facing similar dilemmas. The harsh reality of mass deportations is hitting home for these communities, and they are beginning to understand that the cost of Trump's promises may be higher than they ever imagined. For towns like Dalton, the question is no longer about whether Trump will follow through on his campaign promises, but rather how much destruction those promises will cause. In the end, Dalton's experience should serve as a wake-up call to voters everywhere. When you support policies without understanding their full implications, you risk not only your future but the future of your community. Dalton, Georgia, is now living through the consequences of that blind loyalty, and the rest of the nation would do well to take note.